Hello and welcome to the Facts Over Fandom show. I am your host, Brandon Podgorski. And how about that new intro? Now listen, I am not the world's greatest at technology, but the fact I was able to put together a fun new intro, if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, that might be my highlight of the week. That might be my accomplishment of the year that I was able to put that together. So please make sure you go check us out on YouTube or Rumble. But if you're listening to us on the podcast, we're always excited to have new listeners and our returning listeners. Our returning listeners, you know who you are. I know who you are for the most part. We appreciate you being here, really appreciate your time and taking 30 to 40 minutes with us every week to look at the intersection of sports, business, culture. One thing that will not change, though, is Cinderella Gypsy Road. I love that song. In my mind, I've already talked about this in episodes in the past, one of the more underrated hair bands in the 80s, but I digress. Hey, today, so if you listened to the show last week or you watched the show last week in my Uncle Brandon advice segment, which is always in the second part of the show, I gave some advice to fans, and especially college football fans who are going to be watching games. You know, we had week 0 last week. Don't pop off at these players. Don't slide into their DMs. Don't tag them in and do things like stupid death threats or you missed a kick, you sucked, and I missed my bet. Don't do that stuff. That's just kind of weird and creepy that you're doing that to 18 to 22-year-old young adults. So today what I thought I would do is talk about something that I'm actually going to be talking about in my full-time job and in my classes as a professor. And I want to talk about defamation, and we'll talk about slander. We'll talk about libel. And what is that? I think it's interesting as we think about college athletics and NIL, where now these student athletes, already before, but certainly some of them now, we're on a first name basis with, women's gymnastics athletes here in college. So are athletes opening themselves up to more scrutiny than they have before, and opening themselves up to more reaction from the public than they ever have before? What are their protections with that? So it's going to be a little bit of a shorter show. Just want to kind of give you a 30,000-foot overview of what defamation might look like. And again, we'll talk about slander and we'll talk about libel. Before we do that, we always want to say a special thank you to our one and only sponsor. This will be the only ad read you hear during the show, unless somebody else wants to come and throw some money our way. But our only ad read during the show, Crossroads Shirts. I want to show you their website. Love this company. They're making fun shirts. Now, they started off making some shirts for your favorite school, and that's their motto, shirts you wish your school sold. But they've started to branch out. Now they're making running shirts. I saw this one with the Gadsden flag kind of in the news right now, the Come Tread on Me treadmill shirt. So it's a picture of a treadmill with like the grass underneath it, kind of like the Gadsden flag, and in kind of the same font. Instead of "Don't tread on me," "Come tread on me." So I thought that was kind of clever there. Only $29.95 for this shirt here. If you use the promo code FOF10, FOF10, you can get 10% off your purchase at crossroadsshirts.etsy.com. That's Crossroads with an S, crossroadsshirts.etsy.com. Promo code FOF10. Get 10% off your order. You can also follow Crossroads Shirts on both Facebook and Instagram at Crossroads Shirts. That's it, just at Crossroads Shirts. So go visit our friends over there at Crossroads Shirts. Okay, so let's get into our topic today. And I told you our topic today, as I try to bring my face back up here on the screen. There we go. Our topic today, we're going to be talking about defamation and privacy rights. And we talk about defamation and privacy, right? And it's just the expectation that confidential information disclosed in a private place will not be disclosed to a third party. So with that, if there is an intentional or even an inadvertent, that's why you got to be really, really careful when you're dealing with employees, but intentional or inadvertent disclosures by or to the media, it can expose your organization. And we're kind of thinking about sports teams here, but it can expose those teams to defamation or invasion of privacy action. So think along the lines about statements regarding reasons for terminating a coach. So we see this happen in college athletics all the time. Coach is terminated and the media comes and, hey, why? What happened? Now, there's always a story, right? There's always a story why a coach got terminated. I mean, I'm thinking about one right now. Let's Pat Fitzgerald. Right. Pat Fitzgerald was just terminated at Northwestern University just a few weeks ago, and hazing allegations had to do with that. And the school comes out and, violation of our personal conduct policy or violation of HR policy or school policy, the employment policy. That's usually always what they say. And you don't want to get into the nitty or gritty about things because some of this stuff, it could be confidential. You don't want things to leak to the media to where if they got it wrong, if somebody has that information and they got it wrong, and let's say that, we're going to fire, and I don't know that this is true. Okay. This is not me being true. I'm just giving you an example. But let's say in the case of like Pat Fitzgerald, let's say he had nothing to do with the hazing. And from all accounts, it doesn't sound like he had really anything to do with that. Maybe he didn't do a good enough job monitoring the locker room. But it doesn't sound like he actually had anything to do with the hazing from everything that I know, at least. But again, for an example, let's just say he had nothing to do with it, but somebody goes to the media and says, maybe an assistant coach says, well, he was involved in the hazing and that's why he got fired. All right, well, that's not true. And now you're opening yourself up to a lawsuit. And if somebody files a lawsuit, if Pat Fitzgerald is going to file a lawsuit because you said something that wasn't true, he's going to file it against you as a coach and the school. He is going to name every single person that he can on that lawsuit there. And then it's going to be up to a judge to look at, okay, well, this one here, this is legit. This person's legit. This person, maybe not as much. And then they'll go down from there. And so, as a school, an organization, a team, a business, whatever it is, you want to protect yourself. And I know fans get upset and media gets upset because they feel like they don't get enough information or the school is hiding things. Well, no, they're just kind of covering their backside against a possible defamation lawsuit. We're also talking about statements published in the media about maybe an athlete's private life. Maybe it might have to do with how they treat their family or sexual escapades or possible substance use, right? That you know about as a team, as an organization, but you can't talk about that information, right? We all have an expectation of privacy. Now, some of that expectation of privacy, it starts to dwindle a little bit when you're more in the public eye. I'll touch on that here in just a little bit. But for the most part, we're talking about public or personal things like that. We have an expectation of privacy. And this could also include statements made on social media. So, if you're mad at that freshman kicker who misses that last second field goal and you don't make your bet, I mean, legally, could you tweet at him and say, man, you stink. I wish I would have never assigned you to a scholarship. I don't think that's a very moral thing to do. And I talked about that last week in the Uncle Brandon advice. Is it against the law? No, I mean, it's not against the law. Now, could you set yourself up for trouble where if you said something if you start like publishing their address and say, hey, I know you live at 45 Elm Street and I'm going to come tonight and, I'm going to kick your butt. Yeah. Now you're opening yourself up to possible criminal case. If you knew something about that particular kicker that maybe wasn't true, right? If you said, hey, because you missed this kick, I know that you beat your girlfriend and now I'm going to tell the world and I'm going to go to the press and that's not true. Now you're opening yourself up to a possible defamation suit. So I never think it's a good idea to tweet at anybody, whether it be a politician, a business person, celebrity, athlete. I mean, I think you have to understand there's people on the other end of that as well. Do I understand that it happens and these people are in the public eye? Yes. I can't give you my morality, and I can't give you the ethics that I think you should abide by, because they're mine. I don't think I would ever do something like that, where I would tweet at somebody because I was mad at them. But then again, I would have to go back through my Twitter, and I'm sure there's some times where I was upset about something. I just don't see it in my character where I would ever tweet at somebody and say something that was untrue about them, or hit them up on Facebook, Instagram, anything like that. So, you do need to be a little bit careful as we think about defamation. So let's go through defamation here, just the purpose of defamation. And it's to protect a person from false statements that are damaging to their reputation. So again, it's not, so one of the things we looked at in my class was the Deshaun Watson case, where he was accused of sexually harassing, I think it was about 23 or 24 massage therapists. Could you say something? And he was suspended by the NFL for 11 games because of this. So I think the allegations were probably true. I don't know to the extent of what happened. I don't know all the facts because obviously I wasn't in the room, but that was what was worked out through the league, through an independent I think mediator that came in. I think the mediator originally said, hey, he should be suspended for 6 games. The NFL didn't like that and suspended him for 11. And I think they worked with the Players Association with that. So I think there's something there. There were some legs. So, I mean, could you say something, that is along those lines, hey, Deshaun Watson, I think what you did was terrible. Yeah, that's probably okay. You're probably not going to get in trouble because that was already part of his reputation. However, if that had never happened, right, he'd never been accused of any of this stuff, and you would go out and say, hey, you sexually assaulted 24 massage therapists, and that actually never happened, then you're opening yourself up to a defamation suit, again, because he's trying to protect his reputation, because your reputation, especially as a celebrity, is very, very important. I mean, that's really kind of how you make your living. And this isn't just for celebrities either, or for athletes. I mean, this is for anybody, right? You can't, if you don't get along with your child's teacher, you can't make up things about them, right? So the elements of defamation, right? A defamatory act, we got 3 things. It's a false statement. It's published to a third party. So this isn't just you and your buddy talking, right? You've put it out there in the media, right? It involves some degree of fault or negligence also on the part of the publisher. So you put something out there to the media. The media doesn't really vet it. They just take it and run with it, which we've seen happen before. And that could be that would meet one of the elements of a defamatory act, and it causes actual damage. So, you say something, or you go to the media about an athlete and you say, hey, I got dirt on this athlete. I know for a fact he's taking performance enhancing drugs. I know it. Even though you don't really know it, and you're lying because maybe you don't like this athlete. He's on a team that you don't like, whatever. But yeah, he's taking PEDs. And then whoever it is for that media outlet, maybe it's a newspaper, maybe it's maybe it's a cable news show, something like that. Like, oh wow, this is good, because I really have always wanted to kind of get this guy. I'm just going to run with it, even though they haven't been able to vet and verify the story. They run with it, they publish it. It turns out the athlete is not on PEDs. Well, obviously that could cause damage. Maybe it causes damage because he doesn't get another contract. Maybe one of his sponsors drops him. Maybe his wife leaves him. I don't know, right? I mean, damage of different things. Okay, sorry, lost my mic there for a second. And so as we're thinking about defamation, there's kind of 2 types. There's slander, and that is spoken communication, so things that have been said about you, usually in the media. And then we've got libel. and libel is written. So if somebody writes something about you, maybe in the newspaper, that would be a form of defamation that is written. So we got slander, spoken, libel, which is written. And I want to talk about, malice and malice towards athletes. Now, there's malice towards public officials or, public figures. We're going to kind of deal more with kind of like public figures as we're thinking about things, for athletes and coaches. For public officials, if we're thinking about politicians, the president or something like that, for a public official to recover from a defamation suit, they have to prove actual malice, that the statement was made with knowledge that it was false and with reckless disregard, whether it was false or not. Right? But we have a First Amendment right here in the United States where we are free to criticize public officials to make sure that we have that free exchange of ideas. So, if you're not happy, with the president and his performance on things like the economy, well, you can bang on him on that. You can say, hey, I think your policies are really bad. You don't really have an understanding of the economy, and so on and so forth, right? We see that happen all the time. But what you can't do is that you can't make a statement that for a fact is false, and you're trying to do it recklessly to try to make that person look bad. All right. So that would be public officials. You do have the right to speak out on public officials. Right? You just can't say anything that for a fact that is not true and that you're doing with reckless disregard. As we think about athletes and coaches, so for professional athletes and coaches, they have to prove that a defamatory statement was made with actual malice. Like somebody said something about you where they knew it was not true and they're trying to hurt you. They're trying to damage you. And so, thinking about athletes and coaches, though, that sometimes can be a tough thing to prove. And you've got people coming from you at all sides all the time because there's always somebody who's not going to be happy with you. You could be the Super Bowl winning coach and there's, 31 other fan bases who don't like you very much, who have something to say about you. Right. So it can be a little bit tougher, in this situation, just because, athletes, coaches, they have voluntarily placed themselves in the public eye. They're exposed to greater scrutiny, public scrutiny, and they have greater access to the media, and they can better defend themselves a little bit more than just kind of the average Joe. So, that malice standard for coaches and athletes, I don't think it's necessarily higher, but sometimes just because of all the scrutiny they get. I mean, if I'm a Lakers fan and LeBron James goes for a last second shot and he misses, and I just say, man, you were trash. You were not better than Michael. You'll never be better than Michael. You think you're great, but you're not all that great. And you choke and blah, 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 blah. And you just go on and on and on. I mean, that comes all over the place. And, I mean, it's not necessarily, I don't know if you can actually say it's defamatory. Maybe there's an argument that it is, but are you actually going to go after, 10,000 people who tweet at you because you miss a shot? Yeah, it's just not really workable. But if I'm going after you personally and trying to damage your reputation personally, then it becomes an issue there. Right. And I think it's going to be interesting. College athletes, they start to kind of move a little bit more into the standard because now they're voluntarily kind of putting themselves in the public eye and they are exposed to greater scrutiny, just with the massive TV contracts that are coming about and with the NIL opportunities that are coming about too. They're going to receive, kind of more hate, as I say that in air quotes, that comes their way. But is it actual malice? Is it actually defamatory? You may not like it as a college athlete, but there's always unintended consequences to laws and regulations that come about. And, for the most part, I don't have a problem with NIL. I'm probably a traditionalist or a fundamentalist when it comes to sports. I think, for college athletes, getting a free tuition, assuming you're getting on full ride, getting a free tuition, free room and board, free books, tutoring, nutritional support, academic support, training with, top-notch trainers, the best medical support you could get. Like, I think that's all valuable. Like, I think that actually means something. So I'm kind of a little bit more traditionalist in that way. However, with the NIL, so I never was a really big proponent of paying student athletes. However, with NIL, I always thought there was something kind of un-American on not being able to profit off your name, image, likeness. Now, I understand why those rules were in place. I mean, there's going to be some schools who are going to be, if there were no NIL rule, we're going to be able to leverage that better than others. And you could, at that point, presumably buy players. You have a car dealer in the area and like, hey, you come to our school, we're going to pay you, $50,000 a year to sign some autographs, where other schools don't have that. So I understand why there were rules in place. And again, a kid being able to make a little bit of money on the side, selling an autograph or doing an appearance. Hey, I don't have a problem with that. Right. I think that's fine. But now with NIL, I mean, players are making, upwards of $1 million. You think, again, to go back to the gymnast example, I always kind of forget her name, Olivia Dune, right? The gymnast for LSU. All I could tell you is that I know a lot of my younger male students are very interested in her for reasons. She has now placed herself in the public light. So you're opening yourself up to more scrutiny than just kind of the average person. And so somebody who might come against her and say, hey, listen, I don't like you flaunting your body. I think what you're doing is immoral. It sends a bad message for girls and yada, 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 yada. That's the unintended consequence of you feel that's what you need to do to make your NIL money. And yay, rock, go team fight. You got to, do whatever it is you feel like you got to do, I guess. That's your decision. But if that's the path you're going to choose, then there's scrutiny that goes along with that. Now, if somebody starts, and people kind of push back on you. Now, somebody starts saying things that are not true against you and actually trying to cause you damage. Now you've got some legs to stand on to possibly file suit. So I just think with college athletes, you got to be really, really careful with all this stuff. Just know, you're opening yourself up to greater kind of scrutiny from people and than you would have maybe otherwise. So that's just kind of one of the unintended consequences of NIL. And I've been thinking about doing a deep dive on this when I have a little bit more time and really talking more about NIL and, just the opportunities it's presented for students, but also some of the headaches that have come along the way with this as well. So what are some strategies? So let's say you are an athlete, or maybe you're a team or an organization. What are some strategies that you'd want to put in place to kind of protect yourself? Well, as much as possible, document your strategic alliances with a memo of understanding to define parameters and your interests. So you're going to be working with, again, going to go back to the NIL example, you're going to be working with a certain company. What is it that you're going to be doing for them? Are there going to be morality clauses that are included in that? If somebody would say something against you that's untrue, what protections are they willing to offer? How far are they willing to go? Involve lawyers in drafts of agreements, negotiations, and research before you sign anything, before you sign any contract. I know sometimes scheduling with a lawyer can be tough and the prices can be a little bit high, but it really saves you in the long run. And you want somebody who has your back legally. You do not want to enter into an agreement that you have not read and you do not understand, because it's easy to lose what you might consider some of your rights in that situation. So get a lawyer involved in all this stuff. And as much as possible, use email. Email is a great way to kind of keep a paper trail of everything that you've talked about, whether you're entering into an NIL deal, whether you're entering into an employment agreement. Keep good documentations. It's a way to protect yourself. Verify information provided to the media. So if you do have information about an athlete, a coach, whatever it would be, make sure you verify it before you take it to the media and you take it to the public. Avoid disclosures about personnel, employment, or status of coaches. You can either say, yes, they're still with the team, or they're no longer with the team. I mean, I know people aren't really happy with those answers, and they may, in the answer on why they're not with the team, you can say something to the extent, just depending on what it is, it was failure to live up to their contract, or violation of policy. You don't have to get specific on what it was that happened. Allow resigning coach to make an official announcement themselves. Now, so on the other end of this, if the coach or the player wants to kind of spill the beans on what happens, hey, God bless them. That's on them. That's not on you as an organization. And so give them that opportunity. Now, they might want to protect their own reputation and what happened. People usually don't like to go up there and talk about their failures and, hey, I really stunk as a coach, so that's why I got fired. But give them that opportunity. And then they can share what they're comfortable sharing. And it kind of gives you, again, just kind of another little layer of protection there as a team or organization. Be aware of limitations on the type of information that can be disclosed about student athletes. So there's something called FERPA. There's FERPA law here in higher education. So there are things that I cannot disclose about my students. So I can't disclose their grades. The only one person who has that power on a college campus would be the campus registrar. So if a parent would call me, or a prospective employer would call me and say, hey, listen, I want to know about, Joey Bag of Donuts, tell me his grades, or why isn't he passing your class? I can't tell you, because there's a federal law that says that I'm not allowed to give out that student information, anything that's personally identifiable, or, information about grades, address, things like that. Legally, I cannot give out that information. Now, can a coach, let's say I'm a faculty member on a college campus, and a coach calls me and says, hey, can you let me know how, Joe Bags is doing in this class? We need to know for eligibility purposes. Now, that's a little bit different, because the coach would kind of have a vested interest, and they're also go through the same training and understand the same, restrictions that we're under with FERPA. So, you could talk to like their advisor, you could talk to their coach, you could talk to like the registrar, and because they understand, and they're also considered an interested party there. But I could not publicly disclose a student's information, or certainly a student athlete's information. And then finally, have a data protection system in place so things don't leak out. And, leaks are going to happen. It's just kind of like the nature of the beast when you're talking about athletics, or you're talking about pro sports, college sports, things like that. But you need to try to build as many systems as you can to protect your athletes, protect your coaches, protect your staff, and protect yourself as an organization. So there you go. Just a quick 30,000-foot view on defamation. Make sure you keep it tuned in here in the next segment, the Uncle Brandon advice.
But let me hit you with some knowledge.
All right, Uncle Brandon advice. In this week's Uncle Brandon advice, it's not meant to shame you. It's really kind of meant to encourage you, because I'm a parent too, and I completely understand. But I want to give some advice to parents, probably more specifically dads, just because I am a dad, but just parents in general. And that would be, we're entering back into, we're getting close to September. So we're almost at the point where just about all kids are back in school by now, and probably right around Labor Day. And that means kids are getting involved again in athletics. And there is a big, big need for volunteers and for people to help. I've talked about it on episodes before, how we're starting to see officials get out of youth sport, middle schools, high school, everything in between, just because of some of the abuse that they take from parents, other fans, coaches, players, which is really disappointing. But we're kind of, I don't know if we're seeing like such an exodus on the coaching side, but there is a need for parents to get involved and volunteers to get involved on the coaching side. I coached my son this year in T-ball. It's the first year that he played T-ball. Had a blast. and you're coaching 4-year-olds, so you're really just kind of herding cats. And my son, he loved to hit. Hitting was a ton of fun for him. But playing the field, he could not have cared less about playing defense. And he just did us, kind of dirt angels in the infield, and really kind of played with rocks. And, here I am, sport management professor and teaches on youth sport development. And, your kid is the one who's just kind of messing around and pulling weeds. But, it was a great time, and it was a time just to be with these kids, hopefully teach them a little bit of something about the game, but just instill a love of play and just have fun. And if nothing else, if they had a lot of fun and they come back and they play next year, then I really feel like I did my job, especially at this age. And so he's getting ready to play flag football here coming up, and they're starting to send out more and more emails looking for volunteer coaches. And I'm going to jump in as much as I can. But, just for parents, please get involved and help. I'm concerned about the direction of youth sports right now. It's becoming so professionalized. We've got a lot of kids specializing earlier and earlier. Kids are opting to play with their club teams instead of like their high school teams in the summer, in kind of like the hopes of a college scholarship. And I've gone through all that. If you go back to one of our earlier episodes, I talk about kind of youth sport development. And I get into the opportunities and chances to play college and college sports. And it's very, very low. I mean, is between about 5 to 6% of high school seniors are going to be able to go on and play college athletics at any level. And only about 1 to maybe 2% on the high end are going to get scholarships. So the chances of your kid having that opportunity to play college sports is very low, and then receive money to play college sports is extraordinarily low. However, they are going to be professionals in something one day, and they are going to go to college, and they're going to have professors who are going to challenge them, and they're going to get out in the workforce, and they're going to have managers who challenge them. And I just think there's so many amazing lessons to learn in youth sport that will stay with them for the rest of their lives, whether or not they ever play in college or they become a professional athlete. I just think, I wasn't, I was a club sport athlete in college, but I wasn't a varsity athlete, and I certainly never played professionally. But just so many lessons that I learned as a kid playing sports, about teamwork and, dependability, sacrifice, hard work, overcoming adversity, I still use today. And I'm getting, in my mid 40s now, and I can still kind of lean on those things in my professional career, knowing that, I've overcome some really hard things and had hard coaches. I can handle what's being thrown at me now. And for me, that was just a result of sports. And it was a result of having really great people feed into me. My dad coached me, probably from the time I was 5, 6 years old, all the way through Little League, I think, and probably until I got into high school. And that was a really special time, to have that with your dad, to be there to support you. I also had other amazing coaches as I got older who, again, were demanding, and held me accountable. But at the same time, like, I knew they cared and they wanted to get the best out of me. And it's so much easier to respond to a boss, or a coach, or whatever it would be, professor, who is really tough on you, because they can see something in you. They want to take you to another level. They're not being tough to be a jerk, but they want to take you to another level. And had I not had really good coaches and people who really kind of pushed me when I was young, in appropriate ways, pushed me when I was young, I would have never, I probably don't have the success, or I might not be in the position that I am now. So, and that was a result of just parents stepping up. And, I could think of one coach I had in particular in baseball. He just wasn't a good coach. He just didn't really know necessarily what he was talking about. But doggone it, he coached every year. And when he was needed, he raised his hand and he said he would do it. So, I really respect him for doing that, because no other parents were willing to do it. And there might have been parents who probably could have coached a little bit better, who knew more about the game. But he stuck his hand up. And he said that I'll do it. And, that's something as I look back now, boy, I really appreciate that. So, so get involved as much as you can, even if you feel like you don't know a lot about the sport. Just help out, be an assistant, or maybe be the parent who gets together the post-game snacks, be the parent maybe who helps with emails, communication, things like that. All that stuff is needed to run a successful league. And I'm going to tell you something, your kids are really going to enjoy it. And if you just keep having fun at the center of everything, your kids are going to have an amazing experience, because once they get into middle school and they get into high school, you're going to have coaches there who obviously understand what they're doing and understand techniques in the game and in the sport and all that stuff. And they'll be the ones who will be able to kind of refine them and help them with their development. But in the meantime, man, just get involved and have fun and create a safe environment. And not only will your child appreciate it, but you're going to have a ton of fun too. And, I just keep going back and thinking about, the 2 months that I got to spend coaching T-ball this summer, and just how special that was for me as a dad, having that time with my son, even though there were sometimes driving away from practice where I'm just like, I'm looking at my wife, and, if you're watching me on the video right now, I'm kind of holding my head. I'm just like, oh my gosh, that was crazy. Am I nuts for doing this? How bad of a coach am I? They're not listening to me. And, then just kind of catching myself and saying, but you know what? We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun kind of playing tag, or we had a lot of fun kind of chasing each other out on the field, or, getting them to actually hit coach pitch. All that was a lot of fun. So, so many great memories. And this time it's fleeting. The more and more that I'm with my son, and the more that, or the older I get, the more I understand the phrase that, the days are long, but the years are short. And it's a very, very short amount of time that we get with our kids here, to where we can teach them and guide them and coach them. And then after that, they get to about middle school or whatever it is, somebody else takes them. So the time they can start playing sport, let's say maybe about 4 years old, maybe 6 years old, depending on the kid, to about 12, there's only 6 or 8 years you have there with your child, and they could live, till they're 80. So you only really got 6 years to kind of get involved. So get involved, and don't worry about if you don't know it all. You can learn. Just keep things fun, keep it safe. And I guarantee that you will probably get more out of it as a parent than your kid will as a player. So just some Uncle Brandon advice there. I'd love to hear what you think. Hit us up on social media, Twitter, Instagram, at FOF Show. If you're listening to us on the podcast, please check us out on Spotify. We're also on Apple, Amazon, and Google. And if you want to watch us, it's not the prettiest visual show in the world, but I'm getting better. The intro and the exit, it is getting better. You can check us out on YouTube and Rumble. Thank you for joining in. Have a fantastic Labor Day weekend. Enjoy it. I'll be back next Friday. As always, love God, love each other, be a good sport. I'll see you later.